Hello again and welcome back to the CompleteASP.net course. This is your instructor, Jeff Scott. We've been talking about a little primer on programming, and I've created so far two different iterations of a calculator program, and I've copied it, and I'm going to now create or work on a third iteration. So I'm going to bring up Calc 3. That right now looks exactly like Calc 2, but we're going to make some changes to it in just a minute. So right now it looks like this. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with the way that it looks. Okay? But what I'd like to do is, instead of having it look kind of the way it looks right now, where you have to enter a number, boom, you enter another number, and then you get the results. Well, I want it to be a little bit more reminiscent of the way a calculator actually looks. All right. So what we're going to do, it won't look exactly like a calculator, but it's going to start to look like a calculator. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up some area here, and I'm going to type in here. In fact, before we even do that, let's see. I'm going to add a label. Right there, and after the label I'm going to add a drop-down list, which is a new control for us right there. And don't worry, we'll clean it up in just a minute. We won't need this result anymore. Okay, so I'll get rid of that, but when I do, it's going to introduce a bunch of other errors into my code. So for now, at least, I'll just leave it in there. All right, so let's pretty this up, so to speak, just a little bit. So we've come in here and we've got our first label and our first text box, our second label and our second text box. All right, so I want to get to here. So we're now right there. All right. And this will be called label operation. Why? You'll see why in just a minute. Again, we want the run at equals server, and we want it to say operation. We'll probably need at least a few non-breaking spaces. And let's take a look at that. You can see it's coming to fruition a little bit. Doesn't look too bad in there. All right. Now, again, I'll go over here and find that smart tag and choose edit items. And I'm going to put in 5 items. First one will be plus. Oops. The second one will be minus. The third one will be multiply. The fourth one will be divide. And the fifth one will be modulo. All right? So, I'm going to save this and run it right now. Whoops, don't worry about that. I'm going to save this and run it right now. And you'll notice there's my number 1, there's my number 2, but now I have the operation, and I can change it to any of those 5 operations. That's exactly what I want to have happen. So now I do not, for the result, I don't need this big long thing anymore. I'm going to shrink that down so it's the same size that it was previously. All right, and it'll be single line. So it'll, for lack of better words, we're kind of prettying this up a little bit. So this is all fine up till this point. I should have done it before we started. Double check, let's see, operation. That's label operation, good. And this should be drop down list operation. All right. So now with the result, it's still called text box result, but where we had it set up to be multi-line, I'm going to now move that back and set it up so it's just a single line. All right? So again, the idea now is if I type in a 55 here and a 22 here, and I click the plus, it should say here 55 plus 22 equals 77. Okay? All right, what operation do we want to perform? Well, the operation we want to perform is going to be the one based on what we chose here in operation. So the plus sign for addition, the minus sign for subtraction, the asterisk for multiplication, the forward slash for division, and the percent sign for modulo. All right. Now, there's different ways of doing what I'm about to show you. Okay? So let's take a quick look. We still got our calculate results, etc. All right? But now, after we've set up our N1 and after we've set up our N2, we don't know right now whether we want to call return sum or return diff or return prod or return quote or return mod. We don't know yet which one of those we want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all these that are in here right now, all of those, and I'm going to remove it for right now. And I'm going to call a new return. Don't worry about this. We'll fix it in a bit. That's going to be called get operation. All right? In fact, we'll make a new variable. We'll make it a string. So string op for operation equals get operation. All right, we'll put that right here. And instead of get operation, we can call it return operation. It really doesn't matter. All right, you'll notice now I don't get an error here, but I get one here because it says I'm returning a string and I'm not returning anything. Okay? So, now all of that should go away. There we go. Now what we want to do is we want to check and we want to see what value, all right, what value we selected here. And the way that we do that is we're going to say if, so we're going to use the if statement, if the, and we call that drop-down list operation, okay? Long name, but that's all right. So, if the value we selected was plus, well, then what do we want to do? We want to call get sum, okay? But in order to call get sum, or return sum, I guess it is, which is down here, return sum, we need number 1 and we need number 2. So what that means is this operation is also going to need number 1 and number 2. All right, so we're going to call here return. How about this? String op equals return operation. Well, I'll tell you what we can do. We can just come in here and we can just return plus or minus or whatever. Okay, that's not a problem. So we'll leave all this out. And what we'll do is we'll just set it up so it's, if it's a plus, we'll return add. If it's a minus, we'll return subtract. If it's an asterisk, we'll return multiply. If it's a forward slash, we'll return divide. And if it's a percent sign, we'll return modulo. All right. So what should happen here is, depending upon what it is we've put in, which of those 5 symbols, will return either the word add or the word subtract or the word multiply or the word divide or the word modulo. All right, so we've got that. Now, what we can do, just so you see this, and I've got a couple things here that are giving me error messages, so I'm just going to, let's see, what is wrong with it? Path return a value. Return add, return subtract, return multiply, return divide, return modulo. Multiply, return divide, return modulo. This should never happen because it always should be one of those symbols. But if it's not, we're just returning nothing. All right, that'll appease this. Now, if I come through here after I've done all this, okay, notice I don't have any more errors. I should be able to, inside of this text box right here, this result, now I'm going to print out the operation. So if I've got this, it should say plus. If I make it a minus, it should say add, subtract, etc. Let's see if that works. So I'm going to say text box result dot text equals up. And we're going to see right now whether or not that works. We don't even have to put anything in here, but if it's a plus, no, it's not going to, yeah, we do have to put numbers in. I guess it is going to complain about that. So yes, yes, yes. So I'll stop that. I'll run it again. We'll just put in garbage numbers. They don't matter. So now add, subtract, multiply, divide, and modulo. Great. This is doing exactly what we want it to do. All right? So that's all fine. We now know all of that stuff works. All right? But I don't know yet which operation I want to call. Do I want to call return sum, return diff, return prod, return quote, or return mod? Which one do I want to call? I don't know. So I'm going to write another routine that's going to do that. So I'm going to call a function or a method that we're going to write that's called call math function. And it'll need to know that operation. All right. All right. So I can do this. So I'm going to show you this in two different ways. I can come through here now and I can say if op equals add. Then what I want to call is return sum. Okay? And it's going to need those two numbers, so I'm going to have to pass those in also. And I'm going to need to pass in N1 and N2. If I passed in subtract, then I want to call return diff, and again pass in N1 and N2. If it's equal to multiply, then I want to call return prod and pass in N1 and N2. If it's divide, I want to call return quote and pass in N1 and N2. And then finally, if it is what did we call that? Mod, I believe. Then we want to call return mod and N1 and N2. All right. Now, we're starting to get a lot of code in here. So let's take a step back and look at everything that we've done. All right. Move that down a little. So we've now discussed addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and modulo. All right. We have looked at now the double equal sign to test for equality. We have used the plus sign for string concatenation. We'll look at these a little bit later. We'll look at the logical operators a little bit later. We've used the plus equal so far from our shortcut list. All right, and we've also come in here and we've said from our selection, I don't know if operators is really right, so let's say selection statements. So far, we've looked at the if statement. And we've looked at the if, else statements. All right? So, we come through here. We click our submit button, which calls calculate results. Calculate results goes in and first grabs the two values from our two different text fields. Then it's going to figure out what operation. And all this return operation does is it converts it converts the operation that I did in the drop-down list into its English equivalent. And then right now, I'm printing it out in here. Then we call the correct math function. If the operation that we put in was a plus, we return add. If it's a minus, we return subtract. If it's an asterisk, we return multiply. If it's a forward slash, we return divide. And if it's a percent sign, we return modulo. Otherwise, we return nothing, and that should never happen. Then, so after we've done that, we call our return operation. Then next, we want to call our math function. All right. Well, we got to do that right here. So call math function. And in order for that to work, it needs N1, N2, and the operation. All right. Oh, I guess I'd already done it down here, but that's fine. So now we've got all of our information. Now we can come in and call print results. And we do want to pass it all of this, but we don't have to pass it. Yeah, we still have to pass it all this, but now we also have to pass it the operation. All right. And do we have to really pass it? Let's see. This call math function is going to call this, which is going to call return sum, return diff, return whatever. So what we really want to do is make that a double, and we want to, for call math function, we want to say double answer equals. All right. And now we only need to pass in number 1, number 2, the operation. We don't need to pass that in anymore. We need to pass in answer. All right. So let's go down to print results at the bottom. Double answer equals call math function. Sometimes when you start writing these and you basically write them in front of people, they end up taking on a life of their own and becoming a lot bigger than we planned on them being. Such is the case here. All right. So now, in our print results, we need number 1, number 2. We need the operation, and we need the answer. And that's all we need. All right? So, string result. Now, all we have to do, we don't need any of this stuff in here. But we need to say number 1 plus, this is wrong now because we want instead the operation, plus number 2 equals, and we want that to be the answer. And then we want to stuff that in there. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first save this and make sure that it works, and then stop this lecture. After I stop this lecture, I'm going to come back and just have another lecture that just explains this. All right, so let's use 67 plus 33. If we add them, well, that's not right. We don't want the add, but that's okay. So add 33 equals 100. Let's just check all of them. Make sure all of our operations are working. That's good. And that's great. They're all working. Modulo doesn't appear to be working because that should have been a 1. We'll go back and look at that one in just a minute. All right, so let's fix this, and then we'll stop, and then I'll come back and really take our time, and we'll add some comments to this, which will make it much nicer too. Now, the reason that I was getting the word in there is because I don't want to actually pass op in there. I want to pass drop-down list operation dot selected value. That's what I want to pass. So when we come down here, I don't know if it's going to choke on that or not, but we got plus that, plus, so that can still be op, that's okay. So N1, then our operation, N2, and then our answer. All right, let's see if I fix this or if I made it worse. Okay, plus, minus, multiply, divide, and modulo. Again, that isn't right. I don't know why the modulo is funny like that, but we can take a look at that in the next lecture.